Today we're going to dive into a really fascinating idea called polyphonic storytelling. And trust me, it's a concept that might just change the way you think about every story you hear, every story you tell, and maybe most importantly, the story you're telling yourself. Let's get into it.
So, I want to kick things off with a question for you. Is a story ever just one story? I mean, really think about it. We tend to think of stories as having one single clear voice, right? One perspective. But what if that's not the whole picture? What if every single story is actually a whole collection of different voices, all talking at once?
So, here's our roadmap. We're going to break down what many voices even means. Then, we'll look at the problem with only hearing one. We'll see how this whole thing plays out in our daily conversations and even inside our own heads. And then, the grand finale, how to find that real, complex, multi-layered story within.
All right, let's start with the big idea itself. One story, many voices. So, what on earth is polyphony anyway?
Well, the literary theorist Mikhail Bakhtin put it like this: a plurality of unmerged voices, a genuine polyphony of fully valid voices. Okay, I know, that sounds a little academic, so let's translate. It basically means a story isn't supposed to be one voice shouting down all the others. It's about letting multiple, totally distinct, and equally important voices all exist at the same time.
The absolute best way to get this is to picture a choir, not a soloist. A soloist, that's one melody, one perspective, one story. But a choir is something else. It's rich, it's full of different harmonies and textures. No single voice is the song. The magic, the beauty, it comes from how they all sing together without just melting into one. That right there, that's a polyphonic story.
So, if a story can be this beautiful choir, what happens when we try and force it to be a soloist? Well, that's where we run into trouble. This is where stories, and the people in them, start to become objects.
There's a name for this, and it's called storied objectification. It's what happens when we take someone's complicated, messy, multi-voiced reality and just flatten it. We press it into this simple, predictable little box. Think about it, like when we label someone as the funny one or the smart one, and we completely ignore all the other contradictory parts of who they are. We literally turn a living, breathing story into a static object. We silence their choir. And you can see the difference so clearly here. On the left, that's the soloist story. It's the objectified version. It loves to use stereotypes, social, gender, economic traits to tell a simple, easy-to-digest story. But then on the right, you've got the choir. That's the polyphonic story. It's based on what makes a person unique. It makes room for all the complexity, the contradictions. It lets all those different, unmerged voices coexist. Now, this isn't just some abstract idea. It actually shows up in how we talk to each other every single day, which brings us right to section 3, how we hear others. Because it turns out listening isn't just on or off, it's a whole spectrum.
This chart breaks down a few ways we interact with people's stories. For instance, narrating. You know when a friend tells you a dramatic story, and when you retell it, you subtly make yourself the hero who gave all the great advice? That's narrating. Shifting accent is even sneakier. It's like taking someone's sarcastic comment, "Oh, that's just great," and repeating it to someone else like it was a totally sincere, happy thought. Each one of these, if we're not careful, can flatten another person's story.
So what's the goal then? It's to get to something called internally dialogized ideas. All that really means is having the ability to hold someone else's story and their perspective in your mind right alongside your own without one of them having to win. You can hear both voices at the same time. That's real polyphonic listening.
Okay, let's bring all this home. Let's look inward. Because this whole choir thing isn't just about other people's stories. It is absolutely happening inside your own head right now.
So, I'm going to ask you again, but this time, it's personal. What voices make up your inner choir? It's not just one, is it? We all have this incredibly complex, nonstop internal dialogue going on.
And here are just a few of the usual suspects. I bet you recognize the internal critic, that voice that's always ready to judge your every move. Or maybe the internal saboteur, the one that loves to whisper that you're going to fail right before you try something new. Then there's the story with a sideward glance. That's the voice that's constantly comparing you to other people, always wondering what they think. These aren't just random thoughts. They're distinct voices in our internal choir. And just recognizing them, well, that's the first step.
So all of this leads us to the final, most important part, finding your true story. How do we make that leap from being an objectified soloist story to being a living, breathing ensemble? Well, the path to polyphony really has 3 key steps.
First, just start to recognize objectification. Start to notice when you're flattening a story, whether it's your own or someone else's. Second, you have to actively listen for those other voices. Ask yourself, okay, what perspective am I missing here? And finally, unleash your own inner choir. Acknowledge all those internal voices, the critic, the hopeful one, the saboteur, and let them all be heard without letting any single one of them take over the whole song.
So what happens when you do this? The result is pretty powerful. You start to move beyond a simple static identity, and you create what the source calls a new story of the self. It's a story that's richer, more authentic, more complex, and, ultimately a lot more true.
So I'll leave you with one last thought to carry with you. As you go about your day, listening to others and listening to yourself, just ask this one question. Whose voice does my story need to hear next? The answer to that? It might just be the start of a whole new chapter.